Yeah, so we are good. I started the recording. Hi and welcome to the SUSE QE Tools workshop. So, Bliff, over to you. You wanted to present with a fancy topic today.
Yeah, thank you, Ollie. So the topic today is feedback from a beginner's perspective, and that's why I invited Risto to the conversation to share some feedback, some things to they're easy to run into. Uh, we might find out, maybe there's documentation we can look into, maybe there's bugs that people find, and of course everyone is welcome to join in the conversation with ideas or their own issues, or if you're not that new, you are still welcome to bring up things that you sometimes experience. So you want to share an example of something, or to share your screen of something that
Okay.
you found? Yeah.
Well, nothing to share a screen about. But yeah, the new user experience got me wondering how many new users there are. We also had another new colleague and we hit identical issues. So, first of all, uh, there's lots of documentation, that's great. And if you follow the steps to install openQA with the script from the documentation on the latest tumbleweed, it doesn't work as you would expect. You have to do additional stuff. So this is kind of unexpected. I asked around with my colleagues like what OS I should set up for testing. They were like tumbleweed. We always test against tumbleweed. So you go to the page, you get the script, you run it, and you have some missing packages for the development side. The container as well, it has some, like the container is at the top if you want to start a new instance, but when you ask people, they tell you, oh, but the containers, they're new, they're magical, use the script, which seems kind of odd. The container worked right out of the box, no issues, everything was great with it. I was told that the container couldn't copy assets, but I cloned the job and that worked out of the box as well. So the information regarding the tool and how it works is very different from the documentation, and depending on who you ask. And this is my main point here,
So,
especially
so,
when
so,
writing
so
tests.
you're saying that all the people working with openQA for ages already, that they should learn out that by now there are even better and easier ways to get openQA up and running.
Yes, yes, and this is let's say a battle that I've had in almost every company ever since containers became popular. But if it works in the container, you can be almost 100% sure it's gonna work in another case unless you have a very specific local setup, in which case that's on you. I mean, you're doing the weird stuff, figure it out.
Right.
Uh,
Just because you mentioned documentation, so what place of documentation were you referring to? Because sometimes people are actually also confused and following.
open.qa.
Yeah, right. So the official documentation place, because in some other cases, some guys had writing up nice guides of OpenKA, and then people were referring to that as documentation, but then maybe it became outdated. So okay, you picked up the right place, and then with the script, I guess you mean the openQA bootstrap script, which you can
Exactly,
call
yeah.
on a tumbleweed system, but that's also the one that we call automatically within the container when you.
Wait, so you call the script that downloads it from the internet?
No, we have the container, and the openGate Bootstrap script is uh, used inside there to install the packages same as you do on a Tumbleweed system, but within the container. But then, depending on what packages are already provided, maybe the Bootstrap script is only starting the instance or configuring it.
Okay. Makes sense. So the thing is that I dove into this to figure out. Basically, we have a package group that's the openQA like essentials that start the worker and everything, but you have a package group that's for development, and I assume that's more for the development of the tests and development for openQA itself.
Yes.
And this package is listed as recommended, but it didn't get installed, and I have no idea why.
In a container or?
No, on fresh tumbleweed, like the latest from the webpage. So
I would have expected that by default on an interactive tumbleweed system.
exactly. And so two of us hit this issue separately without talking to each other.
Yeah.
So uh, especially for new people, it's kind of weird because it's like, okay, do this and it should work, and then you do it and it doesn't. And the reason isn't immediately obvious because uh, it's like run this script. Okay, I ran it. Well, we'll figure it out. But I checked the spec and it is listed as recommended, so I have no idea why it doesn't get picked up. I haven't had the time to go through the bootstrap script. I doubt that the installation is done with like no install recommended, so I don't know what's going on there.
That's, yeah, otherwise would have been my first suggestion. So I do use no recommended in some cases to not install everything. What was the package name?
So the one that doesn't get installed is called like OS how to inst devel.
Yeah, which I guess is optional depending on what you want to do.
Yeah, I assume it's only used for developing OpenQA or writing tests.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, it's mentioned in a couple of places in the docs. I'm guessing that's probably something you've looked at, right? So let's
Yes.
take a look at the docs together just to see. Maybe we'll spot something here. Should be able to see my screen.
Yep.
I think.
Exactly, yeah.
So this is, for instance, we're running
So
tests.
this would be for developing OpenQA itself, right? But
Yeah.
OS order inst devel is recommended as part of the
Sorry, I
OS
misunderstood. You
dependencies
meant
group.
OS order inst devel. Okay.
Which is recommended as part of the Osado dependencies. And
It's mentioned on the GitHub page of OS AutoInst for build instructions, section installing dependencies.
So interestingly, yeah, the docs here don't mention it at all, if I get it right.
no, they don't need to, because James, where did you get this from?
Someone wrote a comment.
Yeah, I just tried installing the OS AutoInst distro open to the depths, and then that's actually an output from Slipper directly. I'll try to figure out how it actually sees a conflict and what exactly it means.
Send the spec, I guess. So right here.
Yes,
Maybe
exactly.
I should have selected the proper line, but it's recommended.
Yeah, it's fine. Right. So this. Okay. So first, Liv. It's not in the openQA documentation because this is Osado specific. Okay? The OS order inst distro open source the test distribution instructions. or
Right.
how do you use that? And then the question is, do you just want to, I mean, to change something in the test distribution, you basically just need an editor. And if you're just relying on GitHub anyway, where we have the openQA well integrated, then maybe no other dependencies are needed. However, if you want to run tests on your own, that would be one thing. And if you want to use the run the local unit test, including the styling checks, then this is
Exactly for the
helpful.
styling
So,
checks.
yes. So
For the tidy module.
yeah. So that's why it's a bit. So that's why we want to have it separated, right? So for example, that the openQA workers, they don't need to handle maybe problematic dependencies going down to all kind of style checks when they just want to run the test. You're talking from a test developer, let's say from the perspective of a good test developer, and you want to do style checks before you create a pull request, which is a good thing. And then I don't know. I guess we should take a look into the README what it says there.
Yeah, I was just a little confused why it's listed as a recommended package, but it doesn't get pulled as a recommended package.
Yeah.
And that's installing it using Zipper, for example?
Yes.
Is that related to the message Dimstar posted there?
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
That's what I'm wondering. Maybe it is actually something to be fixed on the packaging.
You know, I have to be honest, when I found out which packages are missing, I just installed them by hand, because only at a later point I figured out that there's a package group. So I haven't actually tried to install the package group itself.
Mhm.
Maybe it just fails.
So, Twister, maybe you can. I would be interested in a bit more context. So, what so far were you trying to achieve, or maybe what have you been asked to do? Like review openQA tests, change, fix, develop new tests.
Uh, all of the above, basically.
Okay,
So
that's good.
yeah, one of my first tasks was to change some tests, and yeah, I hit this immediately, like right off the bat. I assume maybe that's not the case for everyone, but so someone mentioned previously about the workers, and so the workers are just VMs. I mean, you don't run any containerized workers, anything like that.
We use the container image ourselves. When I say we, then I mean the tools team where we develop openQA and also we maintain openQA open source org instead of SUSE. And at least on openQA open source org, we use container for the S390 control worker instances because we run those encapsulated using the containers on one of the workers, which run normal QEMU x86 core jobs, and additionally in the container they run S390 mainframe test with the I guess it's using I don't know which container it's using, probably the openQA worker itself, but maybe did we give it some flex or something? I don't remember clearly because we have sub packages in OS Ordnance. For example, you could say I want OS Ordnance, but specifically for QEMU x86 core or for S390 remote control workers.
Okay, so I'll jot this down to just having to do a whole lot from a few different sites at the same time.
Mhm.
So I'm starting to get the feeling that maybe my other questions will also be tightly related to my team.
Sure, but I mean, right. Who else is here from QACT? Okay, I guess we need to get people out of the summer vacation period still. This is the first workshop again after a longer pause.
Okay, then maybe I just have a question. So, writing tests in Perl,
Mm-hmm.
what I see, at least from the tests that I've looked at, especially in the O2Inst dist3 OpenSUSE, the tests themselves are pretty basic for the most part, and we're just calling some bash commands on the box at the end. So
Yeah.
we're just sending scripts to a VM. And is the point to have a framework for these tests? Like a little esoteric question, but what is openqa?
Right. Who would like to answer that?
I guess I can answer that. So openQA is a synthetic user doing things at a computer, which is implemented as scripts and backends, much like what an actual person would do. And instead of typing on the keyboard, it's synthesized typing, and commands to the scripts are converted to individual keys, and mouse input, for instance, it's also sent to something like VNC.
Mhm.
Does that
Well,
answer the question?
yes, but that's not esoteric enough. I meant like, is trying to be a framework, a test framework? Is it trying to be? Okay, I'll let you.
Mama, speak up.
Yes. May I disagree about?
Yeah, please disagree.
No, it's just personal opinion, but yes, sometimes we can describe OpenQA like a synthetic person that typing stuff and look at the screen through needles. No, but for example, sometimes needles does not matter at all, especially if you are running stuff only through the terminal, or even if you are using OpenQA, for example. I'm from cloud and SAP team. We are usually not run stuff directly on the worker, let's say, but on some remote machine on the cloud. So for me, openQA is even more importantly like uh, test manager, like managing a queue and resource, manage workers, manage result, presenting results, and so I keep comparing it with other tools, like for example Jenkins or stuff like this. So I like this part of it. Not I like, but I see this part like important. And talking about framework to execute the test, it could be anything that you manage to get on the remote, on the machine under test. For example, I like the OpenQA feature to manage external result. OpenQA is able to parse JUnit output and present it. So
Right.
Okay, so why I'm asking this question? I have done tons of automation with a lot of different tools on the market, including Jenkins, GitHub CI, Azure DevOps CI, Little Circle CI. I've done also Windows automation, like GUI automation that mimics an actual user, Selenium, Cypress, a lot of different testing frameworks and automation tools. And from my point of view, I don't see how openQA is different because, as you mentioned, the CLI tests, I can do them in GitLab CI. It can also parse JUnit. I can see everything. If I need to execute, like start a VM, there's I can start it with sorry. I mean, we're basically, I assume we're doing the same thing, like just using Kimu under the hood. Or you can use Nomad, Vagrant. There's thousands of tools to do what openQA does. And if from a like test automation framework, based on the tests, like all the tests are very different. So I don't see people treating it as a framework. I recently had a conversation that what is the difference between a test module and a test suite, because I opened a file that does a lot of things, and in my mind the test module should be like a simple thing and you collect a bunch of them and that becomes the test suite. And that's what it says in the documentation as well, but that's not the thing that I'm seeing in the repository. And if I just need to run scripts on a machine, there's a lot of other tools that do it. If I need to read the screen input, there's a lot of other tools that do it. And I'm just wondering, like, what's openQA trying to be?
Yeah, that's a very good question or topic to bring up. I would say there are some good reasons why people use openQA. Among them is what Richard said about the really good test manager, so providing a nice overview with a clustered view of what's the current state of the product. Second, it can be a very good solution, although there are alternatives on the market regarding testing from a user perspective without changing the system to make it more testable. So, I mean, originally why it was brought into existence is to test the user interactive graphical installer of Open. And for that, it was a good choice to develop that system, and I think it's still let me make that bold statement. I think it's the best choice. Okay, but there are also bad reasons why people use openQA, and one and foremost is considering that most of us here are employed by SUSE as QA engineers for many years. The bad reason why people use openQA is because somebody told them they should use openQA and tests already exist in openQA and they continue to use openQA. And the bad consequence of that is that people re-implement tests which are already existing in another framework. Maybe another framework would be even better. Maybe it would be much more suitable to come up with a simple shell script in a GitLab CI pipeline, but instead they write complicated OpenQA. In the worst case, that can happen, right? But those are not good reasons why one can or should use OpenQA.
Yeah, I'm just wondering from the point of view of, let's say I'm brand new and I want to pick how to automate my tests. If you check like top 25 options, I'm not sure if openQA is even listed.
Mm-hmm.
And it just something that, at least to me, it's a bad look. Like you open the documentation, the intro video, or in the GitHub, I'm not sure, but there's an introduction video and it's 10 years old. And that just sets the tone. Like, okay, this is a legacy product. Maybe I won't be starting with it. It's just a, let's say, a vibe observation.
Absolutely, sure.
Which one are you thinking of? So my first thought would have been the how to get tests running in 5 minutes, but that is not 10 years old.
There is one like what is openQA. I found it either in the docs or in the GitHub. It's a link to YouTube and it's 10
Yes.
years old.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because that's still the most popular open video, not because it's the most recent. Liv, will you moderate? Handled raised hands. The patient participants.
Right, yes. I'm not sure who was first, so I'll say Janus, please go first.
I wasn't first, but the question is, what will you expect to see from openQA? What features, or what will make it more suitable for your needs or for to sign as a test framework?
So, in my mind, and if you check like the most popular options, the test framework just handles how you write your tests and it doesn't care where you run them. So, like the latest and trendiest, something like a robot framework, it's just you write a library and you write the tests, and the tests themselves are simple. So right now, the tests themselves are also Perl code, and they can get pretty complex and hard to understand. And writing tests should be simpler than that. And you can write a very juicy library with a lot of hacks and a lot of code, but writing the test should be easier than writing the library. And so, in my mind, OpenQA is kind of like Jenkins, where right now you can do everything you want, sort of unrestricted. And the other tools that pulled ahead over the years have a very clear design goal. So it's very annoying when you start using something like GitLab CI or Azure DevOps where it restricts you. It's like, no, you can't do this. And no, you can't just run whatever you want. But at the same time, it really puts everything into focus and it makes it easier to understand what's going on because there's not unlimited freedom. And what I would like to understand is what's the design goal of OpenQA, so like what we're trying to accomplish. Is it is the focus like the automation part? Is it the test framework part? Is it the GUI testing, for example?
If you compare it to GitHub or Jenkins, I would struggle to figure out how to do the things I use openQA tests for in those tools, to be honest. So I'm finding the comparison very interesting.
So if we're not talking about GUI, literally you can have a bunch of tests, they can have all kinds of logic, you can present this in a nice graph that spews out at the end which tests were successful. You can mix and match different tests for different languages, so not only JUnit but like other standards of reports. You can mix them into one view. Now the GUI part, okay, I admit that's a separate can of worms, and there isn't like one or two dominant tools to handle that. The thing with the needles seems pretty intuitive to use. So you just plop a screenshot of what's expected and then you expect it to be the same. Fair enough.
Mama, go next. That's it.
And about the topic that people are implementing stuff and could do the same not using OpenQA. One part of it is that at least internally we have OpenQA highly integrated with other stuff, like package testing and other stuff. Now we have bot that trigger stuff. And so moving completely away from openQA means also to lose all this kind of integration. But again, it comes back to what I was saying before. What I think that openQA is most important is about receiving triggering test, managing queue, managing resources like workers, and how present results, and expose an API to be able from the external to retrieve the result. No? So possibly I will focus on that part. And then about the test implementation itself, as openQA has this API to manage external result, this could be the entry point from any other external test framework, be whatever. I think that most of the test framework support output in JUnit, no? And so we are fine with it. And again, the graphical user interface testing with needles, I think that openQA provide a solution for it, no? But again, we are reusing the name openQA for two very different stuff, no? So ISO2 video and GUI testing on one side, and all the infrastructure to manage testing queue result triggering. No?
You make a very good point. Yeah. If you treat those two as separate things, then yeah, I see the part that's unique and the part that can be done with other tools.
Jose?
Try to give my opinion here. So because I had, as Yanis is saying, so I had similar thoughts at the beginning, like 7 years ago when I joined. And yes, I mean, there's other tools out there. There's many frameworks you can use, many options you can use to run your test on your automation. And nowadays there is plenty of things, and even for graphical UI use cases, right? But openQA has become a standard for us. So this is the reason why we are still using it, and this is like our let's say validation tool for the products we are responsible for. So I know that other departments like Rancher team and some others, they are using different tools, and that's fine because they have their own QE. But for the products that we are responsible for, like all the SLE and micro and all the things that you can see in openQA, it has become our standard. Even for containers, we're testing containers in openQA, and we have many tools which are involved, which are talking to IBS, OBS, and triggering test automatically. So it has evolved so much that it has become, yeah, necessary for us to to run the things on openQA, even though we are using different external test suites. So let me tell you a story about containers, since you are in the QC. So you know that there's the BCI test suite, which is on GitHub, and it has some Git actions that you can, it will try to validate new code against some open source containers. But that's that's being used today also for internal validation of our enterprise containers. And so we need to trigger that on openQA internally, and we are reusing that test suite and running it on our openQA instance. So you can take any external test suite and run it in openQA with hardware or workers that you want. So you can do anything there, and there is too much integration already done for all the build services that we have when it comes to building new projects and so on. So it has become our standard. That's the answer I would give you why openQA. Because
Oh, look, I'm not asking why OpenQA. I'm well aware that once you make a choice and you use it for 10 plus years, you're kind of stuck with it. That I'm well aware of that part. I'm more asking like, what's the goal? Because let's say if we focus on the automation,
Mhm.
we can start using some other framework for writing the tests. It doesn't need to be Perl in a sense. OpenQA can run the tests without Perl. This is like
I mean, you are free
it shouldn't.
to write to write it in other frameworks and execute it on OpenQA ultimately, so that you will see the results on OpenQA, and that's the way. Yeah, we can prove that something is validated. So, kind of.
Yeah, I mean free in the sense that yeah, I can go ahead. But
Yeah.
yeah, and the other part is like if we focus on the test framework, there needs to be more of a framework. So
I mean,
I'm trying to understand the product. It's really easy to come and be like, oh, what's this? Oh no, let's switch to whatever I'm used to. That's the best, and yeah, I'm not
yeah,
trying to do that. I'm trying to understand like what's the vision.
yeah. I wouldn't call OpenQA framework per se, because it's basically a tool which has a lot of flexibility, which means that you can do anything. You can create your own libraries. You are not tied to a single way of executing things. So you have many ways to do the same thing. So in the end, is I wouldn't call it a framework like in Robot, where you have some syntax when it comes to write a test, or you have, I don't know, PyTest or things like this. I would say that it's, yeah, thanks to this flexibility, you can do anything, right? And then it's up to you how you want to run it. And I will tell you something. I started to hate Perl at the beginning. Probably that's common for everyone, right? But yeah, after some point of time, so it's not that bad. But yeah, there's customers who probably, or users out there who would like also to use OpenQA, and there was an effort started to so that you can write those tests on Python, right, with some kind of wrapper, and that's also yeah, possible, right? So it's not, you're not tied to Perl only. So yeah, we need to improve on that side but yeah, I think it's just the flexibility that it's giving you, right, at the end.
The thing with
I can
Perl
tell you.
sounds like Stockholm syndrome.
Say again, please.
Uh, when he said that he didn't like Perl, but then he started liking it, sounds like Stockholm syndrome.
No, not liking it, accepting it. Yeah.
So I can tell you how we as the tools team see the mission for ourselves. What we want to do is to provide to offer the easiest way to provide complete quality for software. And for that, what we want to provide is the most complete free software system level testing solution. And what I mean by that is being able to test operating systems, complete machines, or complete software stacks, including multi-machine services. Okay, so maybe just a single application if it's integrated within an operating system. Think about something as simple as a small application which goes into SUSE tray. Okay, maybe you want to really test integration of how does that integrate into the whole system. And for that, again, bold statement, I think it's the best solution. Or maybe I became a bit short-sighted in that regard, but I'm not aware of another solution which is as good as OpenQA is, in particular if it involves a graphical component for that purpose. There are better tools if you just want to test a web page, if you just want to test a single well-contained application. There are much better tools if you want to test something like network stacks. You just want to test libraries, then there are many other better or easier tools to address that. The second part, which is part of that, is not just writing and designing the test, but also how it's organized and how it's displayed. And we can see that how it's currently used. So for example, you can take a look on the web page of openQA or SUSE itself, but you can also see that it's tightly integrated into processes like Tumbleweed. I mean, if a Tumbleweed, the part of the definition of Tumbleweed is openQA. Without openQA in the current form, there wouldn't be no Tumbleweed process. Same goes for the Open Build service. And of course, there could be alternatives which could be developed and extended and configured to put into the place of that and still have a product like Tumbleweed, which is a rolling release, a prime model. Okay, who was next? I think in Jitsi, if I click on the hand, then can somebody else raise a hand? I would like to try out if you can see the order of who raised it. Thank you. Okay, I just see that there are 2 raised hands. Okay, anyway, so Mama.
I like to tell a short story. When I was a beginner in openQA, it's two years later, but I think some questions are still valid. My first hack quick was about, I have this idea, okay, now I have openQA, how can I use it? I would like to try to use it to test my favorite terminal is Vetsterm. Could be Alacrity, could be whatever. The cool thing there is that you have a very complex configuration file that change many parts of the graphical user interface. So I know openQA has ISO2 video, has needles, seems perfect fit for that one. So I started coding something in Perl somewhere in some repository. Here the point, no? openQA is strongly tied to distribution. You need to provide version, distribution, and flavor. And it was my first problem. What does it mean in comparison with Vetsterm or Alacrity version? Probably nothing. I would say, okay, let's use it like I would like to test Alacrity across Windows, Debian, and OpenSUSE. Fine. Then, for example, where to put my code should not be OS auto-inst3 OpenSUSE, or should be, or not. And there's this example, this repository called OS auto-inst dist3 example that should be like a template. So I could like not fork it or cut and pasting somewhere and start coding there. And I remember I was not able to do it. I was missing some parts. So 2 years later, how I should do it today? Or anyone from the audience can suggest how should I use openQA, for example, to test Vetsterm or Alacrity? Or make sense to do it or not at all? It's an open question.
To test what exactly?
You want to test? Yeah.
I would like to test a graphical user application, like I don't know, the graphical user interface of. I provide like an example, Alacrity or Vetsterm, that are terminal manager, but it could be anything, like I don't know, my favorite browser or my text editor. Does openQA fit to this kind of tests? I would not like to test a complete OS distribution, just on a graphical user interface application.
I would say either you have the application designed so that it doesn't really depend that much on the operating system, then it doesn't matter. But still, you're running it on somewhere. If you're using a GitHub action, by default is using something like Ubuntu latest, and then Ubuntu latest is also a certain version of Ubuntu, and then sometimes it tells you like, oh, okay, you cannot do that anymore because now Ubuntu latest is the new version, and the new version is using a different version of Python. So in the end, there's always some dependency on the operating system. Of course, it's always helpful if you have as little dependency as possible, right? The one benefit of openQA, Trista, I saw you. I just like to relate that to the container testing story that Jose mentioned. Is it was discussed multiple times to have something like a container backend in openQA, right? It would be more abstracted, and you could just say, that's the container I want to test, and then you do less test code, just get a container starting an application in the container. But multiple times it turned out like it's actually, there is a big benefit in knowing in which environment you spawn up the container. And that's why also the test matrix contains multiple environments in which you start a container. Of course, you want that to actually test something like Docker and Podman to know how does it behave on SLE, how does it behave on OpenSUSE, how does it behave on Ubuntu, Fedora and such. But also, if there's anything problematic coming up, then often enough it helps to make it explicit that there is a surrounding environment and not try to abstract it away too much so that afterwards you just see, well, the application in the container fails and you don't know why that is because there's something in the underlying environment. Christoph?
So I think I understand Maurizio, right? So I think I understand his point. Like, I want to automate an application, not an OS, and openQA is very tightly coupled to the distribution and the OS, and specifically to SUSE OSs.
Yes.
And if I want to automate some GUI application, there isn't a very good path to do that because it's going to be different from OS to OS, and there is no let's say easy way to try it out. By the way, I also tried with the example repository. I tried just to run it to see what happens, and I couldn't run it. It was easier to clone an existing job with assets and stuff than to run the example repo. So yeah, this is one of the.
I'm interested to hear more about those problems because, you know, the example distribution is regularly tested within OpenQA automatically, so we know that it works, but of course it always depends a bit on how you set this up, and maybe instructions are missing something or are ambiguous.
Only, I think the problems are this. It doesn't matter. It's it's how you make it easy to run some things.
Tests in general, you mean? Like how to
Yeah, like what I think, I can see the benefit of, say, I have OpenQA and I want to test Firefox, and you say you give the image that you want to, the distribution of the image, and you can launch immediately, I don't know, Firefox, and do whatever you want from this point.
Yeah.
That will be awesome, but also need some thought. Like to provide them some list of tools, Linux programs to be able to run immediately and let the tester, from the tester needs, see what it needs to be done there.
Yep. So short response to that. That sounds awesome. I would love that. I don't see that we can see it as a priority for us as a team. But for the project,
Priority, no, but
yeah, for the project, that's a good vision. So think about a really small test description which only says start my application. Let's stay with the example of Alacrity. So that you want to get started and you don't care if it's running on a Ubuntu or Tumbleweed or Windows or whatever, right? So openQA has a good default, and if you like, yeah, can still configure it, and you can set up a test matrix and test it in all different. But the starting point should be that you don't need to care about that because you're just looking at it from the applications.
Good. I would like to add that my point is that I placed this example because I feel openQA is used for many different stuff, and this was one example now. So ISO to video and graphical user interface needles is one topic, one project itself, and has a value as an autonomous project. And all the part about the web interface, workers management, trigger, REST API is its own different stuff. And I think that for beginner people at the beginning, they sound like mixed because we use the same openQA word, but maybe we can improve this separation somehow.
Yanis, go ahead and keep an eye on the time. That probably.
yeah, it's gonna be short. I just want to say that there is we work on something that in this direction, that you will be able from openQA to trigger some exhaust test and gonna be configurable to run from your own repository or something. Maybe later can extend it to something as described before, maybe. Which I think is like it's very old idea because I have it also in the beginning, and I think it's gonna be nice.
Cool. So, Pisto, any last words from your side before we wrap this up?
No, thank you all for listening to me ranting. I appreciate the discussion.
Thank you very much. You gave that really important beginner's perspective, and that's always appreciated. Liv, anything else from your side?
I would say thank you so much for for giving us feedback and having a good conversation here about it.
All right. So next tools team workshop will be on in 2 weeks from now. That's the 4th of October. That's where we will present the SUSE QE Tools roadmap as of October. And keep in mind that the last one we actually did at the beginning. No, sorry, actually, yeah, we at the beginning of August. So this covers now 2 months periods as is planned with our fortnightly schedule. So see you on the 4th of October. Till then, thank you. Goodbye.